Sophie, I am so excited to have you on the show today. And I feel like there's a couple things that we need to cover before we jump into the book, because like I told you before we hit record, I'm a new listener to your podcast, and that's been so fun. And there's a couple things I've discovered about you that we either share in common, or like I told you before we hopped on, you and Melanie remind me so much of my mom and her best friend, which has been so fun to listen to because, as listeners know, I live pretty far away from my family. It's been kind of like listening to their lives, and that's fun. But also, I discovered that you're a Mississippi girl, right?
I am a Mississippi girl.
Awesome. Okay, so I moved to Mississippi about a year ago. So
okay,
I'm very new to all things Mississippi, and I'm still figuring out the culture down here and all the things. My husband is a pastor of a church in Brookhaven. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I know Brookhaven.
Yeah. So it is, it's been a journey. So I moved from Knoxville, Tennessee down to South Mississippi last year. And so it's a whole new world, man, but it's been good. So
yeah, I grew up in Mississippi, and then I went to college at Mississippi State.
Cool.
And then actually before I got married, I lived in Jackson, which isn't too far from Brookhaven.
Oh, yeah.
So I lived there for a couple of years before David and I got married. And I actually had family in Brookhaven when I was younger, but I always think of it as being such just a sweet, friendly place.
It is.
I don't know. I used to make that drive a lot from Jackson to Baton Rouge when David and I were dating, because he was in Baton Rouge. And so I feel like any I-55 gas station, I'm probably pretty familiar with on that little stretch of road.
So awesome. I love it. Well, yeah, it's been fun. I always tell people it reminds me of Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. If you're familiar with that show, like when I was dating my husband and I was coming to visit, I would always tell people, like, it just reminds me so much of Stars Hollow. So very small, but it's cute. Fun.
Yes, my cousin Jimmy lives there and his wife, and then my friend Tripp from college lives in Brookhaven. So listen, we got some good people there.
We do. We have some really good people. Okay, here's the other thing we have in common. And I'm really jealous of you because you recently interviewed Phil Rosenthal.
Yes, it was the highlight of 2020 for Melanie and me. I still can't get over it that we got to do it.
I still can't.
So much fun.
That you got to do it. That was so much fun. And my husband and I, that was like our show of quarantine. I mean, from start to finish, I've rewatched several episodes. Like when I'm just having an off day, I just need somebody feeds Phil, and I don't care where he goes or what he eats, but he just brings me so much joy. So it thrilled my heart to no end that you guys got to talk to him. That was fun.
We did. Melanie actually found it. I mean, she discovered it kind of before I did, and she had just watched a couple of episodes, and she said, you have to watch this. And I was kind of like, okay, whatever. I didn't have super high hopes about it. And it took me not even half of an episode. And I was like, I am all the way in with this. And so it has just been this little joy bubble in the middle of a hard time. Phil just travels around in a joy bubble, and it's so much fun to watch.
I know. He is the coolest. I just love it. Well, I am so excited to have you on today to talk about your new book. So by the time people listen to this, it will have been in the world for a little bit. It'll come out during the Christmas season.
Okay.
So your book is called Stand All the Way Up, Stories of Staying in It When You Want to Burn It All Down. Okay.
Yes.
That is the best title ever. And when I saw it, I thought, man, because you know how you talk to some authors and they're like, well, I wanted the subtitle to be this, but the publishers told me that was too harsh. Or, you know, you have conversations like that. And I thought, man, that is so bold. I love it so much. And how relevant is it to this season? So tell me a little bit about, like, how did God put this on your heart? Obviously, it wasn't like yesterday that you started writing it, right? Like it was some time ago. So like, tell us a little bit of the story.
So this book kind of came, I don't know, it took a lot of forms, and I really wanted the title to be, initially, I wanted the title to be Burn It All Down, because that's just kind of where I was. I may have had some anger about some things. So, and just some frustration, you know, I think that's fairly common for different phases of life. Some way, I don't know, I guess I started the book in my head in 2017, that summer. And then by 2018, I was kind of in it with it. Then I wrote 20,000 words and spilled a glass of Crystal Light on my computer and lost it all because I didn't have backups. I know there's no happy ending to that story either. So I kind of had to start it over. I actually, when the people from the computer company called and said, we can't get your memory sticks or whatever they are, we can't recover anything. And that was real dumb of me not to have backups, but I had written in such kind of fits and bursts that it didn't feel like a book necessarily. I didn't really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I went to a hotel and I started it all over again. And what I realized was this book that had been burning it all down in my head, just couldn't write from that place of frustration anymore. Like it got some stuff out of my system, I think, to write those first 20,000 words, but that tone was not sustainable for me. So when I started over, it was so weird because I stayed at the hotel Friday night, Saturday night, on to Sunday morning, trying to just remember, recover, reframe all the re's. And I, after that time, I told my husband, I was like, I like this book so much more now. Like it was so much more fun to write. So, and just that reframing, as opposed to just talking about like, I'm so frustrated, it just became more of a book about maybe in light of those frustrations that we all face in different ways in different parts of our lives. How do we respond? What do we see in scripture that tells us to respond, tells us how to respond when we feel overwhelmed or kind of run down or disenchanted, whatever it is. And this whole idea of we see people stand all the way up for the stuff that really matters. And even like, and I didn't write about this in the book, but even when I was looking back one day at the story of Mary and Elizabeth, after both of their pregnancies had been prophesied by Gabriel, and after Mary found out she was pregnant with Jesus, the very first thing she did after she said, I can't remember the exact words, but she said, essentially, behold, I don't know if she said behold, but she said, okay, let it be. And then the next thing it says is that she arose. And so I just started seeing it everywhere. And so that's kind of where it came from, was stand all the way up. And then the subtitle was just my little nod to what the book was when I first started to write it.
If you've ever taken your earrings off at the end of the day with that big sigh of relief, you need to hear about Comfy earrings. Comfy earrings are flat back, hypoallergenic earrings designed for 24/7 wear. No poking, no irritation, just beautiful, lightweight earrings that stay comfortable whether you're sleeping, traveling, working out, or running from one project to the next. They're perfect for women with sensitive ears, and they come in so many gorgeous everyday styles. Check them out at comfyearrings.com or through the link in the description. Refresh your jewelry box with earrings you'll never want to take off. Trust me, your ears will thank you. Now back to the show. Looking for non-toxic, high-quality soap made by a company you can trust? Let me introduce you to Indigo Sundries, a Christian, family-owned small business that's been handcrafting soap for over 20 years. Every bar is made the old-fashioned way and free from seed oils, parabens, phthalates, sulfates, and all the other things your skin just doesn't need. Just clean, skin-loving ingredients that actually leave you feeling moisturized and refreshed. Whether you love a good fragrance, prefer essential oils, or need a simple unscented bar, Indigo Sundries has something for everyone, plus liquid soaps, room sprays, and beard products too. Get free shipping on orders over $50, and don't forget to use code Rebecca10 for 10% off at checkout. Treat your skin to the good stuff at indigosundries.com.
Yeah.
Well, here's what she said. She said, behold, let it be to me according to your word. I think that's what she said.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. Okay, you're an Enneagram 9, right?
Yes, I am.
That's creepy that I know that, but I've listened to your podcast. I feel like that's just a thing that you know about people these days.
It is.
So I'm curious, are you an 8 wing?
Yes.
Okay. So
okay.
Very familiar with an 8 wing or an 8 poster child ate, which that would be my husband. So when I read this, I thought, oh, that's so interesting that a peacemaker would have a book with a title this bold. And I thought, I bet she's an 8-wing.
And I didn't know it about myself for the longest time. And this is really the book, I think, I don't know, I think more than anything that I've written, where I feel like I let that side of my personality out a little bit more, because I do have really strong reactions. And I respond to 8s in leadership positions like crazy, because I love a mentality like, let's get in it, let's go. And I like people who lead from a perspective of like, here's what I'm about, here's what I'm for. I get real worn down about what people are against. Like, let's get in it. Let's affect some change for good. And so it was kind of fun to not that I ever censored that side of myself, but I just think this gave me an opportunity, because of what I was writing about. It just gave me an opportunity to kind of open up that side of myself a little bit more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So you share in the last several years, you've been learning to one, stand up for yourself, for what's right, and then also standing up in the face of adversity. So tell listeners a little bit about just what you've been learning and what God's been teaching you in all these areas.
Yeah, I'd say in the book, I really battled people pleasing for a long time. And I mean, it's still in me. It's not like it's gone, but just, I have a different perspective about it now. But so there's that side of me that I think you just wear yourself down when you're just trying to keep everybody happy. And then my mama was diagnosed with dementia about, at this point, I guess it was almost 6 years ago, and then passed away 4 years ago. And so just anybody who's had a family member who's had dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that knows it's a prolonged grief, because you have the grief when you're in it with the disease, and then the grief, if the person passes away. And so it felt like a really long, stretched out period of grief. So there was that. And then was just sort of the reality of kind of confronting the fact that I had not been very kind to myself in terms of taking care of myself and kind of prioritizing everything that entails. And kind of the weird realization of like, oh, I have been very willing to try to please all these other people, but have not looked at my own self in the mirror and thought, like, what do I need to do for me? Not so that, I can just swim in a sea of awesome, not that, just so I can steward the life that I have been given. And so all that stuff swirling. And then, there's been a lot of chaos just in the current event sphere of things for a while. And so just kind of trying to process all that and figure out, one, how do I stand in the middle of that as an agent of love and mercy and grace and peace and hope and patience? And then, the only way I know how to do that is to look and see where Jesus stood. So it's been a whole deal. The figuring out, how to stand up for me, how to stand up for people I love, how to stand up for people who can't, how to stand up for the kingdom, and how to do that from a place of conviction, because the life of Jesus and you know what mattered to him, and not from a place of fear, and not from a place of people pleasing. So it was a kind of a long way around all that, but it was ultimately something that I really loved writing about. I'm really grateful I got to put it kind of down on paper.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so I'm thinking about all my friends who maybe don't have as much of that fire as you and I do behind them of, it's maybe their natural bent to stand all the way up, right? Like, what would you say to a listener who thinks, like, I don't even know what that looks like in my life? Like, how would you say, this is what it looks like to stand all the way up?
You just have to look at the specific circumstances in your own life and honestly ask yourself, am I in a place that's healthy for me, that's healthy for other people, and that's healthy ultimately for the kingdom? Yeah. Am I operating out of bitterness? Am I operating out of fear? Am I trying to push down stuff, grief or heartache or pain? Am I trying to live by mashing that stuff down? Or is there stuff in my life I need to go through and not around? And then after, we deal with those things, whatever those things may be in our lives. I think, it's going to look different for everybody, because we see in scripture, sometimes the way that Jesus stood up for other people was he got really low. You look at him in the Last Supper, and he washed feet. And so I think standing all the way up doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, step up on a podium and proclaim all your opinions to anybody who will listen. But I think when you stand all the way up in the specific way that God has made you and called you, there's peace on the other side of that. So I would say ultimately, I think a great way to consider how to stand is to consider what would it take for me to pursue peace in my relationships, in my home, in my work, or wherever that is. And I think that's its own life-giving kind of standing.
Love that. And it makes me think of one of my dear, dear friends. She went through a divorce a couple years ago and came out of just a really unhealthy, abusive situation. Quickly moved on in life to a lot of new things, like got a new job, and she moved and did all of these things. And momentarily that helped, right, with the kind of the fleeting grief of the loss of the season that she was exiting. But she kind of got to this place where it was like, okay, if I don't stop, I'm going around it, right? When God is asking me to go through it, and I need to get in counseling. I need to work through some of this stuff so that I'm able to get on the other side and have my joy back and have peace again. I think of her as a good example of somebody who, we all veer off course, right?
Sure.
She, in a beautiful way, has made a lot of decisions to stand back up again. And now she's a couple years on the other side of that journey. And I recently got to spend some time with her, and it was just so sweet to see her in a joyful season again. But I know what that costed her,
Right.
She made those decisions to do that for herself, for her future family. And it's just really, I think, a good example of kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that it's so many times, I think, as women, we tend to live in kind of a sacrificial place. And I don't say that like to set us up as martyrs. I'm just saying we do consider a lot of times the needs of other people before we take care of ourselves or whatever. And I think that's wonderful that we learn from an early age how to show compassion, how to empathize, all those kinds of things. But I think we can settle into patterns sometimes and not even see how they take hold of us, where ultimately maybe how we treat ourselves or how we're treating other people, like it's just not healthy. And I was reminded as I wrote this book that when we really and truly stand in conviction, and we really and truly stand in the places where Jesus would have stood, it's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to hurt us. Now, there may be risk in that, hard choices in that, but ultimately, like in terms of emotional hurt, spiritual hurt, it's not going to do any of those things. So I would say if you feel like where you're trying to stand is really emotionally damaging, it's spiritually damaging, I would get under the counsel of some wise folks and walk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. So there is a lot going on in the world right now. So by the time this comes out, we're going to be on the other side of an election. We are in the middle of a global pandemic. There is just a lot of unrest. So I'm curious if you were to share with listeners, what are some unique challenges that you think women are facing in this season? And how can walking with God free us from some of the traps that, we've talked about a little bit, right? Like things like comparison, people pleasing, shunning community, feeling shame, those nasty things. Like how can walking with God free us from those things?
Oh gosh, I think, it's such a challenge to make God's voice, or to allow God's voice to be the loudest voice in our lives, because there's just so much stuff coming at us. And not to mention that our own voices directed at ourselves sometimes can be pretty harsh. I talked to a friend not too long ago who was telling me how she was just really battling an internal monologue that was not great, just because there's so many things to manage right now. And particularly people who, you have healthcare workers who are on the front lines. You have people in essential businesses like our grocery store workers and our drugstore workers, and those people who have not had a break, have not been able to go home for any extended period of time. You have families who are at home who suddenly found themselves maybe as sort of unplanned homeschoolers or unintentional homeschoolers, and trying to do that and trying to juggle their jobs at the same time. You have, kids who have been a lot of kids who have been home for a really long extended period of time. And none of these things are, insurmountable, but it's like a friend of mine's sister said recently, normally when we're going through stuff, and if our family goes through something difficult or unexpected, we have all these people in our community who can kind of rally around us, take care of us, and jump in and see what they can do. But everybody has been going through something really unexpected and traumatic. And so everybody, as a result, is kind of, so we've not just kind of found ourselves in an unexpected season of life, but we found ourselves to some degree without the standard supports that we would expect to have in this kind of season of life. So all that, I think, can contribute to women really feeling pressure, really feeling like, that they're not doing everything they should be doing. So I think I go back to this idea that God's voice has to be the loudest voice to remind you just how he's got it. And how, I keep reminding myself that no matter what happens, Jesus holds. Like none of this catches him by surprise. None of this affects his affection for us or his care for us. And so I think we kind of have to prioritize connecting there and really knowing what it is that helps us to feel healthy and whole and to prioritize those things. And that may mean that we just don't get it all done, and that may mean that it doesn't look exactly like we thought it would. Yeah. But I think that if we can kind of prioritize, here are my top 3 places where I really need to operate in a healthy way. I think that's helpful when you know what is essential and then what can fall by the wayside a little bit. I actually have a list on my bulletin board right now that, like, on every day of the week, here are the things I have to do. And if it's not on that list, I'm just not going to give myself a whole lot of grief about it. Like,
that's awesome.
I just margin, I think, that people are operating with right now, emotionally and spiritually, mentally, on all the levels. The margin is pretty slim because people have just had to jump into so many unexpected roles. Yeah. So I can't even remember if I actually answered your question.
You did. You absolutely did. And I think, man, there's just so much, right? Like, we're all home with our people and we love our people. We adore
For sure.
But we have never in our lives spent this much time with our people. We never in our lives have been this isolated. We have never in our lives had this great of a deal of time to sit back and think about, what mattered in February I don't have now. What of that do I not want to walk into this newness with? Kind of reevaluating that. And then, I know for us, like I said, my husband's a pastor, and there was a lot of the beginning of quarantine. I mean, it was decision fatigue because we're leading a church through this. We were home so much. I've never had that much time to enjoy my husband before. And I've been married long, but it was really a nice, not break, but time for us to really think about exactly what you're saying. Like, what are we pouring ourselves into? What are we spending our time doing? And what is the most important? And I've just been challenged too. Like, if I reach the end of the day and I think, man, gosh, that day was so busy and I did not spend any time in the Word, I'm too busy. And like, what does that look like? Because that has to change today. And we can't operate like that any longer. And so just kind of reshifting the way we think about our time, I think, has been a good thing, at least for me, that's came out of this season.
Yeah. And I will say, I remember the day that we went home from school, like, when everything felt super uncertain because we didn't really know exactly what we were getting into. We knew it didn't sound great. I remember I said out loud in my car, Lord, I believe you are about to expose a lot of my idols, because I knew that all the things that I can use kind of as security blankets were about to fall. And even stuff like, we love sports in our house. We love a live sporting event. We love a live musical event, but we love to travel. But all those things, man, have I had time to reflect on that kind of stuff. And my perspective really is a lot different right now than it was in March. But that's a lot of taking the places where, maybe the things that I justify under normal circumstances, and really trying to look at those things through the lens of Scripture, through the lens of wise counsel from friends, through the lens of some really candid and honest conversations. And I feel like I have some clarity. And I think where we get clarity, we're going to have some room there to stand and some room there to really love other people. So I'm grateful for that. I hate the reason for all of this for sure. But I think, if the Lord can certainly take this time and use it for really good purposes. So that's been something I've been really grateful for during this time. It's because I think we can just be in such a mode of, running through our schedules and not really thinking, is this thing life-giving for me? Mm-hmm. Is this thing a distraction in my life? Whatever, there are so many things to examine. And I have loved having the time to do that, as much as I hate the reason why we've had the time.
I totally agree. It's been so interesting too. You host a podcast, you talk to a lot of podcasters as well. So it's been so fun to talk to so many authors, talk about their books during this, right? Like I asked you at the beginning, God put this on your heart long ago. It took many forms to get to the book that I now hold in my hand. Right.
Right.
And I'd be curious now that we're in this season, in the here and now, and it's getting into readers' hands, if you could say, this is my hope for people when they walk away from this message that God put on my heart 2 years ago that we're now receiving in a global pandemic, what would you say?
Oh gosh. I hope that people would be encouraged to be reminded of how Jesus really does still the storms. I hope that would be an encouragement. But I think more than anything, I would just hope that people would read the book and maybe just have some small feeling that okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only person who has been frustrated. I'm not the only person who has been dealing with some grief. I'm not the only person who has been walking around with a whole lot of anger and trying to pretend like it was something else. And there's a healthy place that I can get to on the other side of it. I don't have a lot of, I don't know. I sort of learn in a common sense way. So I don't have any revolutionary strategies. The Lord speaks to me as much at the park, watching the geese. I feel like I get as many lessons from that as I do anywhere else in my life. So I hope women don't feel like they have one more thing to do. I would never want anybody to feel like they have one more thing to do, but I hope they would feel convicted about the places in their lives where they really do want to plant their feet and stand up and fight for what matters most in whatever their personal context happens to be. In some cases, that may be in their families. It may be in their communities. It may be in their churches. It may be at their workplaces. But I hope they'll feel like they've been sort of encouraged and spurred on to get in it and to fight for what matters most.
You're helping us all stand just a little bit taller. And I love it.
I hope so. I hope so.
For people to get their hands on it. And they will have by the time this comes out. So that's so fun. So this is going to be a part of what I'm calling the 12 books of Christmas. So what I've done is I've picked 12 books that released in 2020 that I love. They're all different, vastly different, which is so fun. It's been super fun to talk to different authors about what they've done in this year. So one thing that I'm asking all of them, and so I'm excited to ask you, is what is your favorite Christmas tradition?
Ooh. Okay, I'll just be super honest. I'm not great with traditions. I'm not great with doing the same thing year after year after year. But I have Christmas patterns. So I can tell you what my Christmas patterns are. Probably my favorite thing, I really love to cook Christmas breakfast. I always do a Christmas dinner too, but I really love to do Christmas breakfast. But I think the thing that really gets me the most in the Christmas spirit every year, just on kind of like a heart and home sort of level, is I love a Christmas tree. And we have a tree that we have done for years, like a separate tree from our regular tree. That is my Christmas card tree. And so all my Christmas cards every year, I just punch a hole in it. I make a little yarn hanger and I put it on that tree. And so it starts off kind of barren. Oh. And then by the time Christmas rolls around, it's covered in Christmas cards from people that we love and their families and their kids. And we've done that for probably, 10 or 11 years. And I love it every year. It makes me happy.
It makes me really happy. My mom does almost like a garland, like as you enter her kitchen.
Uh-huh.
And she'll hang them with like clothespins on.
See, I would love that too.
I know, because they're all themed, right? Like they're all red and green, and so they all kind of look similar.
Yeah,
it's just sweet.
Well,
look at all
as
the people
opposed-
that you love in one place.
Right. And as opposed to just putting them in a stack, on the coffee table, I just like that I can see them. Like, I can go up to that tree. I can look at them. And when my mama was alive, when she and daddy would come here for Christmas, she would get in there right by it, and she would study every one of those cards. So she could see our friends and their kids. And so, I don't know, it makes me happy. It's such a simple thing to do. The tree that we use is just some like Home Depot tree that we got, on some like Black Friday sale. Nothing fancy, but I don't know. I love it.
I love it. That's so fun. Christmas is my favorite. I cannot wait for it this year. We've had a hard year, so Christmas is going to be fun.
I know. I like a fresh balsam candle from Bath and Body Works.
Damn.
I just like for the house, I don't know, I love the lights, and I just like for everything to look festive.
Me too. Love it. Okay, well, this has been so much fun. Tell listeners where they can get the book, listen to your podcast, all the things.
Okay. The book should be wherever people sell books, most places where people sell books. So Amazon, Lifeway, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all your standard book places. And if you have an independent bookstore that you love, I hope they have it too, because I love to support independent bookstores. And then the podcast is called The Big Boo Cast. My friend Melanie and I have podcasted for about 12 or 13 years, which is crazy. Very sporadically for a long time. And it's wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Is that all? Yeah. And then I'm on Instagram and stuff, but I didn't go to if there was some class where people taught you that all your social media handles needed to match, I missed it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'm a confusing social media person.
I love it. That's okay. Well, that is awesome. Well, I am so excited for listeners to get the book and just let you help them stand a little bit taller. So thank you for being my guest today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I didn't even know I was getting to go to Brookhaven a little bit today.
I know.
So happy about it.